Hello. This is my first time recording the video, so I hope you enjoy. So, Apollo 9, if most people know about Apollo 11, because it was the moon landing, but there were a few missions that had to go right before Apollo 11 could happen. One of which was Apollo 9. And Apollo 9, what they did is it was the first manned test of the Apollo command service module with the lunar module attached. And so they went up into low Earth orbit and docked with the lunar module. And then two of the astronauts got in the lunar module and they went and flew that around for a bit. And then they docked back with the command module and went back to Earth. But so this Saturn V, this model is not completely accurate. Like the flight profile, it's a bit different, but I think it's good. And a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but some people have been requesting that I do commentary, so here you go. And so it's just flying and going into orbit right now. Had stage separation a while ago. Oh, and SpaceX, yesterday they just launched their Falcon Heavy launch with the Arabsat 6A satellite, so congratulations to them. That was one of the best live streams I think I've ever seen of them. And so we just had another stage separation to the S4B third stage. And I'm reading a book on the Saturn V, the Saturn launch vehicle family, and it's kind of weird, like the numbering of the stages, because you go, especially with the Saturn V, S1C, S2, then S4B, which makes no sense. And it's not because NASA doesn't know how to count, but it's because when they were first coming up with the concepts of the Saturn launch vehicle family, they had a S3 third stage, or an S3 stage, but then they never used that answered a question that I had, and I thought it was pretty cool. Also, the Falcon Heavy nose cones, with the nose cones on the inner stages, they were white instead of black like a normal Block 5 Falcon 9, and this was actually because it looked better. Because think if it had the black nose cone and stuff, it wouldn't look as cool as it did. So they just made them white to look better. And so here we are, we're docking. And we just need to dock to the lunar module, and then we can do whatever we want and do our mission. So they had to be really precise when they docked it. They had the command module pilot, who at this time in the mission would be sitting in the left seat, which is normally the commander's seat. They would look out the window in front of them. They had a sight that they had to line up with a target on the lunar module to make sure that they were pointing the right way and that their orientation was correct. Then once they had all that right, they'd go in slowly for docking. And then they would just go in and they would dock and then retract their probe, which is the little thing that kind of sticks out, kind of like a little triangle. And then they'd open the hatch and they could go in the lunar module, which is pretty cool. So, here we are. And there we go. We're docked. And so then the command service module would pull it free from the S4B stage with pyrotechnics and stuff. And then they'd put the astronauts or two of the three astronauts in the lunar module, and then it would undock and it would fly off. And with Apollo 9, they just put it into a different orbit and flew it on its own for a bit. And then they kind of simulated what they would do for a lunar landing, but around Earth instead of the moon. And they did their ascent stage and descent stage separation. And then they used the ascent stage to go back and dock up with the command module, which is what you're seeing right now. The ascent stage did not use ion engines like it does in this. Just that was the only engine that could fit. in real life it had hypergolic propellants, which are fuels, and the command service module, surface propulsion system, and the lunar module main engine. They used hypergolic propellants, which they're hypergolic means when you mix them, they instantly catch on fire and start burning. Which, because you can't really ignite stuff in space with like a normal lighter that they'd use for a rocket launch. Okay, so we just did our rendezvous, and now we're coming in for our docking. And yeah, I'll just use the RCS on the ascent stage to go and dock with the command module. So what they do is the same as like pretty much after they rendezvous, which you just need to get in the same orbit and right next to it. They would just go and do what they did to extract it from the S4B. And here we are, we're about to dock. And there we go. So after they transfer the astronauts back, they don't need that ascent stage anymore. Also, they're about to re-enter. So what they would do, they did the same thing on the moon too. They would basically just crash it into whatever planet or thing is next to you. Like on the moon landing missions, they just crashed it into the moon because you could still control it with no one in it. But after they took the astronauts out, they would just crash it into the moon to get rid of it, so it wouldn't just be space junk. So yeah, that's going to go just burn up in the atmosphere. And then, so after we did that, our command service module, it's going to turn retrograde in a second. And it's going to burn its engine, which is called the surface propulsion system. And it's going to burn that to get it out of orbit so they can go back home. So when you're going to re-enter, you don't want to have it too shallow, which in this game it doesn't really have an effect. But in real life, you don't want it to be too shallow because you'll bounce off the atmosphere, but too steep and you'll burn up because it'll be so like fast and just fiery and stuff. So you get it just right like this. It's in Spaceflight Simulator, if you go in too steep, you'll crash, but not if you go in too shallow. But you just want to get it just right, where you just go in and like, they said in real life, they said it was like, if the Earth were a basketball and the moon were a tennis ball, the re-entry corridor where they had to hit it would be as thin as paper, which is crazy that they hit it every single time. But so they re-enter, and so they're going so fast that the air around it doesn't have time to get out of the way, so it heats up a lot because of the friction. That's why you get, well, it doesn't have it in Spaceflight Simulator, but that's why you get it, like kind of the fire stuff, that kind of thing. It's heated plasma, but it would interrupt the communications between the capsule and the ground. And then they called it reacquisition of signal, is when they would regain the signal, which if you've seen Apollo 13, you probably remember after they re-enter, they're all like waiting for the reacquisition of signal. And so then they'd deploy the parachutes, and then they'd probably around here regain the reacquisition of signal, and they'd be able to talk to the ground again. And there wouldn't be any fire around them anymore because they're going slow enough and they've gotten to the thicker parts of the atmosphere. And they just float down to a nice soft landing. But our parachute is not fully deployed yet. It doesn't fully deploy until we get lower. On most spacecraft, actually, they have these things called drogue chutes, which they're smaller parachutes, and they kind of slow it down a bit before deploying the main parachute, so the main parachutes don't get like ripped up, and it's like less of a just sudden jolt for like the crew. And so in a second we will fully deploy the parachute. I think you can fully deploy it below 500 meters in Spaceflight Simulator, and you can deploy the parachute under 2,050 or 2,500 meters. But if you just wait until 100 meters, it just deploys automatically in this game. And so that's what we're going to do. especially on spacecraft where it's like near stage separators, it's handy just to let it float down to 100 meters, then it'll deploy for you. So we have our nice soft touchdown. See, like that? And here are the blueprints. So it's in 2 parts because it's really big, so you'll have to turn on infinite fuel, zero gravity, all that stuff, and just assemble them. Here's a picture of the launch. Here's a picture of the lunar module in orbit. And then here's a picture out of the window that I was talking about where they dock with the ascent stage. Thanks for watching.